I landed in America with a six-figure salary, but my first taste of the dream was failure from ordering coffee to driving a car. This is the real story of my unexpected journey. So subscribe and turn on notifications to find out what happened next. My life in the USA. My name is Samir. I'm 23 years old, and 2 years ago I made the biggest decision of my life. I moved to the United States. It feels like it was just yesterday, but when I think about it, it has been a roller coaster of emotions full of surprises and moments I never ever thought I would experience. Coming from a middle-class family in India, I always had dreams of going abroad. I wanted to see the world and to make something of myself. I had a good job back home, a job I liked, but the USA was calling to me. It wasn't just the idea of a better salary or living in a foreign country. No, it was something more. It was the idea of possibility. That's what America represented to me, a place where anything felt possible. When I first stepped off the plane in San Francisco, I remember just standing there for a moment. I couldn't believe I was actually here. The airport was huge, so big and busy, and it was filled with people from all over the world. I remember looking around, and my heart was beating fast. I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I had no idea what was waiting for me, what lay ahead of me. But one thing was very clear. I had a lot to learn. The first shock came when I tried to order a coffee. It sounds like a small thing, doesn't it? But it wasn't. Back home, a cup of tea or coffee is simple. You go to the counter, you ask for chai, and that's it. Simple. But here, when I walked into a Starbucks, I was completely overwhelmed by the choices. The menu was so long. "Tall grande venti?" the barista asked me. I stood there feeling very confused. I could feel the people in the line behind me starting to move around, getting a little impatient. Just coffee," I said awkwardly. My voice was quiet. The barista gave me a polite smile, but I could tell she was waiting for me to make a proper decision. She was trying to be helpful, asking more questions. After a few more questions and some awkward guessing, I finally walked away with a plain black coffee. It wasn't what I expected, and it tasted very strong and bitter. But it was my first taste of America. That was just the beginning of my small confusions. Back home in India, we drive on the left side of the road. But in the US, it's the right side. I remember the first time I sat behind the wheel of a car here. My palms were sweating, and my heart was racing inside my chest. I was so focused on staying on the right side of the road, just repeating to myself, "Stay right, stay right." I was so focused that I missed a stop sign. I didn't even see it. Suddenly, I almost caused an accident. The guy in the other car honked his horn loudly, a long, angry sound. He threw his hands up in the air, looking at me like I had just committed a terrible crime. I waved my hand, trying to say I was sorry, but he just sped off without even looking at me. "Welcome to driving in America," I thought to myself. I had rented a small apartment just outside the city. It wasn't much. It was barely enough space for me and my one suitcase. I remember looking around that first night. The walls were white and empty. I thought to myself, is this really it? Is this what I left my home for? The apartment felt cold and empty. Nothing like the warm, bustling home I had back in India. Back home, there was always someone around. My parents, my sister, even neighbors who would just drop by for a chat and a cup of tea. Here it was silent. It was so quiet. I could hear the low hum of the fridge and the occasional car driving by outside on the street, but that was it. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, a fast and confusing time of trying to figure out how to live here. Everything seemed so expensive. I was used to bargaining at markets back home, negotiating prices. But here prices were fixed, and they were very high. I remember walking into a grocery store and just staring in disbelief at the price tags. A loaf of bread cost nearly $5. In India, that same amount of money could buy you enough food for a whole day. I quickly learned that if I wanted to survive here, I had to budget my money very, very carefully. My salary was decent $160 a year, but after paying for rent, utilities, and food, there wasn't much left for anything else. I had to share my apartment with a roommate to cut costs, but even that didn't leave much breathing room. Eating out at a restaurant was a luxury. A simple meal could easily cost $20 to $30. And don't even get me started on the tipping culture. In India, you leave a small tip if you are really happy with the service. It's a nice thing to do. But here, tipping is expected, and it's usually 15 to 20% of the bill. The first time I went out to eat, I didn't leave a tip because I honestly didn't know I was supposed to. The waiter gave me a look that I will never forget. It was a look of disappointment and confusion. I felt terrible once I realized my mistake, but it was a learning experience. Speaking of learning, my English was tested in ways I didn't expect. I had always been confident in my English skills. After all, we spoke English in school, and I thought I had a good handle on it. But American English, that was something else. People here speak fast. Really, really fast. And they use slang that I had never heard before. "What's up?" Someone asked me in the office on my first day. I just blinked, feeling confused. Was he asking about my work? Did he want to know if something was wrong with me? I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and nodded. That became my go-to response when I didn't understand something. A little smile and a nod. Over time, I started picking up on the little things like how Americans love small talk. Back home, if you see someone in the elevator, you usually stand in silence. You don't strike up a conversation with a stranger. But here people will ask, "How's your day going?" Or, "Nice weather today, huh?" It's casual and friendly, but it was also strange for me at first. I wasn't used to talking to strangers, but it slowly became a part of my daily routine. And then there was the loneliness. I didn't expect it to hit me so hard, but it did. In India, family is everything. We are close, always together, always supporting each other through good times and bad. But here I was on my own. I would come home from work to my empty apartment. There was no mom waiting with a warm meal, no dad asking me about my day. It was just me and the four walls. I would call home, of course, but it wasn't the same. My parents were proud of me, I knew that. But I could hear the concern in their voices. They would always ask, "Are you eating well? Are you okay, son?" And I would always say yes. Yes, I'm fine. But deep down, I wasn't always sure. There were days when I questioned my decision. Was this really what I wanted? To be thousands of miles away from my home, struggling to make ends meet, learning a new culture, and trying so hard to fit in. It wasn't easy. But every time I thought about giving up, about going back, I reminded myself of why I came here in the first place. I came for a better life. I came for opportunities. I came for a chance to prove myself. Things started to change slowly when I made my first friend. His name was Josh. He worked in the same office as me, and one day he invited me to lunch. "Hey, you're Samir, right? Want to grab lunch with a few of us?" he asked. I was hesitant at first. I felt a little nervous. Back home, you don't just go out with people you barely know. But I told myself to be brave, and I went. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I made. Josh introduced me to other people. He helped me understand the American way of life, and he even taught me some slang. He made me feel less like an outsider and more like I belonged. As time went on, I started to find my rhythm. I learned how to navigate the city without getting lost. I learned how to budget my money so I wasn't always worried. I even started to cook my own meals, trying to recreate my mother's recipes. I started to enjoy the little things like taking a quiet walk through the park on a sunny afternoon or grabbing a coffee on a lazy Sunday morning. There were still tough days, of course. There were days when I missed home so much that it felt like a physical pain in my chest. But slowly, step by step, I was building a new life here. One of the most surprising things I learned about Americans is how much they love their dogs. Everywhere I went, people were walking their dogs, playing with them in parks, and even bringing them to cafes. It seemed like there were more dogs than kids sometimes. I didn't understand it at first. But after seeing how much joy these pets brought to their owners, I started to get it. Dogs here are like family. People treat them with so much care and affection. It was heartwarming to see, and it made me think about maybe, just maybe, getting a dog myself one day. As time passed, life in the U.S. began to feel a little more familiar. I had settled into my job, and Josh had become a very good friend. But amidst the busy workdays and all the adjusting to this new life, something unexpected happened. I met her. Her name was Amanda. She worked in a different department at my office, and we met during a team-building event. At first, it was just friendly smiles in the hallway. Then it became casual small talk about work. But soon, things started to become more than that. Amanda was everything I admired. She was smart, funny, and full of a wonderful energy. She had a way of making every situation feel lighter, easier. Before I knew it, I found myself thinking about her all the time. We started going out for coffee after work, and those small, quiet moments with her became the highlights of my day. She was the first person in the U.S. who made me feel completely comfortable, like I didn't have to try so hard to fit in. With her, I could just be Samir. One weekend, she invited me to her family's home for a barbecue. Now, if there's one thing Americans love almost as much as their dogs, it's a good barbecue. I had no idea what to expect, but I quickly learned that these gatherings are serious business. Her dad had this huge grill in the backyard, and he was flipping burgers and ribs like a professional chef. I tried to help, but when I accidentally burned a few hot dogs, Amanda's dad gently guided me away from the grill, laughing. "Why don't you leave the cooking to us and enjoy the sunshine, Samir?" he said with a kind smile. That day was full of laughter and good food, and I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt since leaving home. Amanda and I started seeing each other more often after that day. It was my first real relationship in the U.S., and things were going great, until they weren't. You see, Amanda and I came from different worlds. I was still adjusting to life in America, still trying to balance my Indian roots with the new culture around me. Amanda, on the other hand, had grown up here. She didn't fully understand the weight of my family's expectations or the guilt I sometimes felt for leaving them so far behind. We had small disagreements at first. Little things like how often I called my parents, or why I couldn't just fly back to India for a visit whenever I wanted. But over time, those small arguments grew into something bigger. One night, after a long week at work, we were sitting in my quiet apartment. Out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, "Samir, do you ever feel like we're just too different?" Her words hit me like a punch. I didn't see it coming. I thought we were doing fine. But Amanda felt like she couldn't connect with parts of my life, especially the part of me that still held on so tightly to home. We tried to work through it. We talked and talked. But it became clear that no matter how much we cared for each other, we were heading in different directions. The breakup was hard. It was very hard. There were many nights when I would just lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a huge mistake by coming here. I missed her. I missed how she made me laugh. I missed the way she could turn a stressful day into something manageable. I even missed the little things like how she would always steal French fries off my plate when we went out to eat. For a long time, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I would replay our last conversation over and over in my head, asking myself if there was something I could have said or done differently. But as much as I missed her, I knew that some things just weren't meant to be. Life had a way of teaching me that sometimes we have to let go of people. Not because we don't love them, but because staying together would hold both of us back from becoming the people we were meant to be. So I focused on healing. Josh, being the good friend that he was, would drag me out of my apartment when he could see I was stuck in my head. "You need to live a little, man," he'd say, practically pushing me out the door to go grab a beer or watch a game at a sports bar. I didn't drink much, but it was good to be around people to laugh at stupid jokes and to forget my worries for a little while. One night after a couple of drinks, Josh and I were walking home. He started imitating my Indian accent in a ridiculous way. "Oh, Samir, please tell me how to make the best curry," he said in a voice that was so exaggerated and silly that I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I laughed so hard I nearly tripped over the sidewalk. It felt so good to laugh again, to let go of some of the heaviness I had been carrying in my heart. Funny moments like that became my saving grace, like the time I tried to make an Indian dish called samosas for Josh and our friends. I thought it would be nice to introduce them to some of my culture, but halfway through cooking, I realized I had added way too much chili powder. When Josh took his first bite, his eyes got very wide and his face turned bright red. "Dude, are you trying to kill me?" he gasped, chugging a big glass of water. Everyone burst out laughing, and even though my cooking was a disaster that night, became one of my favorite memories. On the work front, things were steady. I was getting better at handling my responsibilities, and my confidence in my English was slowly improving. But every now and then, I would still get thrown off by some American phrases. Once during a meeting, my boss said, "Let's circle back to that later." I nodded seriously, but inside I had no idea what circle back meant. Later, I found out it just meant to return to the topic. It's funny how the smallest phrases can make you feel like an outsider. But over time, I learned to laugh at these moments rather than feel embarrassed. Mistakes are just part of learning after all. Traveling around the US was another big adventure. One weekend, I decided to take a solo trip to New York City. Everyone always talks about how it's the city that never sleeps. And they weren't lying. The moment I stepped out of the subway in Times Square, I was hit with a wave of noise lights and people. It was overwhelming and exciting all at the same time. I spent hours just walking around, marveling at the tall buildings and the incredible energy of the city. I tried New York pizza for the first time. It was huge, greasy, and absolutely delicious. I even met a street performer who was playing the saxophone. When he noticed me watching him, he winked and started playing the tune of an old Bollywood song. It was such a random, unexpected moment, and I couldn't stop smiling. But beyond the excitement of new experiences, there were life lessons that hit hard. One thing I learned quickly was how to manage money. Living in the US isn't cheap, and there were times when I had to get creative with my budget. I remember once during a particularly tight month, I survived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for an entire week. It was tough, but it taught me the importance of planning and saving. And then there were the lessons about people. In America, I learned that not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. People are polite, yes. They say hi, even if they don't know you, and sometimes they give compliments just to be nice. but that doesn't always mean they have your best interests at heart. I had to learn to trust my gut, my feeling to recognize the difference between genuine kindness and surface-level politeness. There were people who supported me wholeheartedly like Josh, but there were also people who didn't really care if I succeeded or failed. Through it all, though, I realized the incredible importance of family. No matter how far I was from home, my parents were always there for me. Their phone calls, their words of encouragement, and even their gentle scolding kept me grounded. They reminded me of who I was and where I came from. On tough days, I would think about all the sacrifices they made so that I could have a better life. That thought alone gave me the strength to keep pushing forward, even when things got tough. After the breakup with Amanda, life slowed down a little, but not in a bad way. I had more time to focus on myself, on my work, and most importantly, on my English. You would think that after living in the US for a while, I would have it all figured out. But no, English is like a tricky puzzle, always throwing new challenges my way. One day, I'd feel like I had it under control, and the next I'd find myself completely lost in a conversation. Take, for example, this one time at work. It was a typical morning, and I was sipping my coffee when my boss walked up to me. "Samir," he said, "could you give me a ballpark figure on the project costs?" I just stared at him blankly. A ballpark figure. Were we suddenly talking about baseball? I tried to keep a straight face and nodded, pretending I understood. But inside, I was panicking. What did he want? I quickly Googled ballpark figure under the table during the meeting and found out it just meant an estimate, an approximate number. Phew, close call. I laughed about it later, but these little moments kept me on my toes. But it wasn't all confusion. There were plenty of fun and quirky things I loved about living here. For one, Americans love their holidays. Every month, it felt like there was some new excuse to celebrate Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. It was non-stop. Halloween was the most bizarre one for me. Back in India, I had seen it in movies, but nothing prepared me for the reality of grown adults dressing up in costumes and roaming the streets. Josh and I decided to throw a little Halloween party at our apartment, and he convinced me to dress up as Spider-Man. Let's just say, wearing that tight suit was an experience. Halfway through the party, the mask became so hot and unbearable that I ripped it off, much to the amusement of my friends. Josh, on the other hand, dressed as a giant hot dog and spent the entire evening telling people to relish the moment. His jokes were so bad, they were funny. Funny moments like that became a part of my everyday life. Once I went to a drive-thru for the first time. I had seen them in movies, but never experienced one myself. I was so nervous about getting the order right that when the lady on the speaker asked, "Do you want fries with that?" I panicked and said, "No, I'll just take the ketchup." The lady at the window gave me the most confused look, and I drove away with only ketchup packets and no fries. I laughed about it all the way home, realizing how ridiculous I must have sounded. Speaking of food, American meals were something else. Breakfast here was a big deal. In India, my breakfast usually consisted of something light like parathas or idli. But here people start their day with pancakes, eggs, bacon, and a mountain of syrup. I tried it once, but by the time I finished, I felt like I needed to go back to bed instead of starting my day. I did, however, fall in love with their sandwiches. A turkey sandwich for lunch came my go-to meal. But I had to be careful. The portions here were massive. I couldn't believe how much food they served, and sometimes I'd end up with enough leftovers for dinner. Life in the US wasn't just about funny moments and food, though. It taught me some hard lessons, too. One of the most unexpected things I learned, it was how lonely it could feel even in a country full of people. You'd think that with all the friendliness, people saying hi, on the street, neighbors waving, colleagues asking how your weekend was, I'd never feel alone. But sometimes the polite greetings didn't go beyond that. They were just that, greetings. It wasn't the deep connection I craved. There were nights when I'd come back to my apartment, sit on the couch, and just feel this wave of homesickness wash over me. I'd miss my family, my friends, even the noise and chaos of India. I would call my parents sometimes just to hear their voices, and it would help. But other times, I just had to sit with that feeling and remind myself that this was all part of the journey. One thing that helped pull me out of those lonely moments was a dog. Not my dog, unfortunately, but Josh's dog, a golden retriever named Max. Max was this big, fluffy ball of joy who would run around our apartment like he owned the place. Josh traveled a lot for work, and whenever he was away, Max stayed with me. I never thought of myself as a dog person, but Max had a way of lifting my spirits. He would plop down next to me on the couch, rest his head on my lap, and just stare at me with those big puppy eyes. Sometimes I would talk to him like he was my therapist. "Max?" I'd say, "You won't believe the kind of day I had." And he would just listen, wagging his tail like he understood every single word. It's funny how much comfort a dog can bring, and I realized why there seemed to be more dogs than kids here. People found so much joy in them, and honestly, so did I. Then came one of the biggest learning curves of my life dating. After Amanda, I didn't think I would dive into the dating world so soon, but life had other plans. I decided to try out this thing called online dating. Everyone was talking about apps like Tinder and Bumble, so I thought, why not? I created a profile, uploaded a decent picture, and within a few hours I got my first match. Her name was Sarah. She was cute blonde hair, blue eyes, with a great smile. We messaged back and forth for a while, and she seemed cool, so we decided to meet up for coffee. The day of the date, I was nervous. I had heard horror stories about online dates going wrong, but Sarah seemed normal enough. We met at a cute little coffee shop, and I ordered my usual black coffee, no sugar. Sarah, on the other hand, ordered some complicated drink with extra foam caramel drizzle and a shot of who knows what. The conversation started off fine, but halfway through I realized we didn't have much in common. She was talking about some reality TV show I had never heard of, and I tried to follow along, but it was like she was speaking a different language. Then came the awkward silence. You know the kind, the one where both of you are searching for something to say, but come up completely empty. I tried to break the tension with a joke, but it fell flat. By the end of the date, we both knew it wasn't going anywhere. We said our goodbyes, and I walked home laughing at how uncomfortable the whole thing had been. That was the first and last time I saw Sarah. Dating in the US was a roller coaster full of awkward moments, but also some sweet ones. I went on a few more dates, some better than others. What I learned was that relationships here were different from back home. In India, relationships often involved families from the very start. But here it was more casual, more about finding a connection without the pressure of commitment right away. It was a different approach, and it took some getting used to. But amidst all the dating disasters and awkward moments, I was growing. My English was improving. I was becoming more confident in myself, and I was starting to really appreciate the small things about living in the US. I loved how people here could find joy in the simplest things, like spending a sunny afternoon at the park or grabbing ice cream on a hot day. It was a slower pace of life in some ways, and it taught me to slow down too. I started to make peace with the things I couldn't change. I'd still think about Amanda sometimes, wondering what she was up to. But I didn't feel that sharp pain of missing her anymore. Instead, I'd think back on our time together with a quiet smile, grateful for the good memories. One day, as I was walking Max through the neighborhood, I bumped into an old man named George. He was probably in his 70s, with a wrinkled face and a kind smile. He waved at me and said, "You're the guy with the funny accent, right?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I guess my accent hasn't faded as much as I thought," I replied. We started chatting, and George told me stories about how he had traveled the world when he was younger. He had been to places I could only dream of: Europe, South America, even India. We talked for a while, and before I knew it, Max and I had a new walking buddy. Every evening after that, George would join us on our walks, sharing his life stories. It was a wonderful reminder that no matter where you are, you can always find connections sometimes in the most unexpected places. As the months passed, I found myself more and more settled into my new life in the USA. The days flowed into weeks, and I grew fond of the little quirks that made living here so special. I had mastered my daily routine, waking up early to take Max for a run before heading to work. The mornings were often crisp and cool, and I loved how the rising sun painted the sky in beautiful shades of pink and orange. It felt like the whole world was waking up with me, and I would take a moment to just breathe it all in. At work, my confidence continued to grow. I started participating more in meetings, sharing my ideas, and even cracking a few jokes, though sometimes they landed better than others. My colleagues had grown accustomed to my sense of humor, and I often caught them chuckling at my accent and occasional mispronunciations. "Samir, you need to start a podcast," one of my coworkers joked during lunch one day. I laughed, but secretly I thought, maybe one day. My friendship with Josh deepened too. He had become like family to me. One weekend, we decided to take a road trip to the Grand Canyon. It was a spontaneous decision. We both just needed an escape from the city. We loaded up the car with snacks, music, and of course Max, and off we went. The drive was filled with laughter and playlists that ranged from classic rock to Bollywood hits. I made Josh listen to my favorite songs, and he pretended to enjoy them, making funny faces when I sang along. When we finally arrived at the Grand Canyon, I was awestruck. The sheer size and beauty of it took my breath away. It felt like a scene from a movie, with the sun casting golden hues over the vast red rocks. We hiked along the trails, snapping pictures and just marveling at the view. In that moment, standing there, I felt so grateful for my journey, the struggles, the laughter, the friendships, and even the heartbreaks. They had all led me to this beautiful place. As we stood at the edge of the canyon, I took a deep breath, feeling the wind on my face. "You know, Samir," Josh said, standing beside me, "we're lucky to experience moments like this. It's what life is all about." I nodded in agreement. I thought about everything I had learned in the past few years about resilience, connection, and the importance of embracing each moment. Returning to the city, I carried that sense of gratitude with me. I had learned to appreciate the little things, like sharing a meal with friends or watching the sunset from my apartment balcony. My English was improving every day, and I began thinking about how I could help others who were on the same journey I had been on. One night, as I sat on my couch with Max curled up sleeping next to me, an idea struck me. What if I started a YouTube channel to share my experiences and help other people learn English? I had seen so many channels dedicated to teaching English, but I wanted to add my unique perspective, the funny moments, the struggles, the lessons I learned along the way. The very next day, I created my channel and started filming my first video. I felt a little nervous talking to a camera, but I talked about my journey to the USA, the cultural differences I encountered, and I even shared some of the funny moments I'd experienced. I poured my heart into that video, hoping to inspire others who felt lost or overwhelmed just like I had felt when I first arrived. To my surprise, the video resonated with many people. Comments began pouring in, with viewers sharing their own stories and thanking me for my honesty. I felt a new sense of purpose. This was what I was meant to do. With each new video, I gained more followers and felt a growing community forming around me. I was no longer just a boy who moved to the USA. I was a storyteller, a friend to those navigating their own paths. Eventually, my channel took off. I found so much joy in creating content that was not just educational, but also entertaining. I incorporated humor, sharing embarrassing stories, and the things I still struggled with, like navigating social situations or ordering complicated food. I brought my viewers along on my adventures, whether it was trying a new food or exploring a new city. Through it all, I never forgot the importance of connection. I continued my friendship with George, and our walks became a regular part of my week. He shared his stories of his travels, and I shared my experiences with learning English. Our friendship blossomed, and he became a mentor to me in many ways. He taught me about life and its adventures, the value of sharing stories, and how every experience, good or bad, shapes who we are. As the seasons changed, so did my life. I learned to embrace change, to forgive, and to let go of the past. I still thought about Amanda occasionally, but instead of sadness, I felt a sense of closure. I was grateful for the love we had shared, and for the lessons she had taught me about relationships, and about myself. One evening, as I sat in my favorite cafe with a warm cup of coffee, I reflected on my journey. I realized that life in the USA had transformed me. I had learned to be more open, more resilient, and most importantly, to cherish the connections I made along the way. I felt proud of how far I had come, from the boy who arrived with so much uncertainty to the young man who had found his voice and purpose. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would continue to share my journey, to inspire others, and to never stop learning. I understood that life would always be a series of ups and downs, but each experience was an opportunity for growth. With Max by my side and a world of possibilities ahead, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. And so, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the city, I smiled, knowing that my journey was just beginning.